Imagine finding a city just outside the EU, close enough to feel connected, but free from its regulations and cultural constraints. My co-host Jason just returned from Belgrade, where he explored not just as a tourist, but with a serious eye on the real estate market. Why Belgrade? He believes it's a hidden gem for investors, a place where you can get in on the ground floor before the rest of the world catches on. In this episode, we dive into his journey through Serbia, the unique vibe of Belgrade, and his bold investment thesis. If you're curious about alternative paths to financial freedom and unique global opportunities, this conversation is for you. This episode is brought to you by Covered.io, an options trading tool that we use to generate extra income to free up time so we can pursue projects like this podcast. This is the Covered Call, the podcast where we explore the journey towards true freedom. In each episode, we bring on guests that have charted their own course towards more freedom, more contentment, and more impact in their lives. Jason, you just went to Belgrade with a friend, and I know you went to because you were interested to see it as a tourist, but also as a potential investor.
Yeah, well, I guess back in 2008, right? This is a long, long time ago. I was studying in Scandinavia as an exchange student, and I had, I think, 6 weeks to 2 months off during the summer vacation, right? And everyone was back home, and I thought, hey, I'd just do like a backpacking slash couch surfing through Eastern Europe, and I just wanted to see how this part of the world looked like. And I had a feeling even back then that I think Western Europe will be Western Europe. It won't change that much in the decades to come, but I think Eastern Europe has a lot going for it, and it's still finding itself. And I wanted to be not part of it, but I wanted to observe and witness and see what was going on, right? So I spent, that 6 to 8 weeks I bought a one-way ticket from Stockholm to Prague, and then I just went through all the cities, either, via train or hitching a ride with people, and mostly just sleeping on people's couches, right? Or in their spare bedrooms, and just talking to them, trying to understand them, trying to understand their culture. Because for me, being from Southeast Asia, Australia, right, this was all super foreign to me. I landed in Stockholm at the age of 23 with this stark realization that I did not know a single soul on the whole continent. So for me, it was really, really like this just crazy exploration stage of my life. So then going through Eastern Europe, I often heard, like, I went to Poland, right, to Krakow, a few different cities in Poland. I went to Slovakia, Czech Republic, even all the way down to Croatia. And everyone kind of asked me, hey, on this trip, are you going to go to Belgrade? Are you going to go to Belgrade? Because that's where it's really at. You have to see Belgrade. You have to see Belgrade. But somehow I just couldn't manage, with flights and with tickets. And with the timings of things, I couldn't manage. So I missed it. And that was, 2008 is 16 years ago, right? So this time when my buddy in Singapore said, hey, let's do a European trip, where should we go? I had to say, hey, let's just go for a few days to Belgrade. I've heard so many good things. Um, and when they say it was good, people were telling me about the culture. People were telling me about the people. The Serbian people are really warm and friendly. They were saying the food's really nice. It's a great place to party, right? Just stuff like that. Nobody commented on the architecture though. And when you get there, you realize why, right? Like, because the place looks really, really like it was, went through a hard time, and they're still, in a way, trying to find their feet, I guess, from the war. But you quickly see that all this brutal architecture is just a frame, right? And inside all these frames, you've got beautiful pictures, like Every cafe, every restaurant is full of warm people serving good food with amazing interior design. Um, yeah, but let me just try and weave my way back, right? So besides wanting to go there to have fun and to let's say take part and learn about the culture, I also read that because Serbia was not or still is not in the EU, it occupies a very interesting place where it is kind of on the edge of this Western civilization called the EU, right? But it's not yet in it. So it borders this town, this region, this block of countries, but it's not in the EU. So I was reading that there was ton of FDI, like foreign direct investment, coming in from not only the EU, but a lot of it's coming from China and Russia, and basically money coming in that's not European money, looking to invest in the region and invest on the European continent while perhaps not being able to do so as easily in the European Union, right? So that was one thing that really piqued my interest. And yeah, the second thing is, as an investor, we've talked about this before, right, Lovis? Like, I love investing in things that are somewhat hated or unloved, right? Because I feel like that's where the value is. And if whatever I'm investing in just comes back to an average of being okay, I feel like I'll do well, you know. And so, yeah, that's basically the basics of why I wanted to just go and find out a little bit more. And we only spent 3 nights in Belgrade. I'd like to go back and do like a more in-depth trip. Maybe you want to come along as well. But yeah, can't wait
Yeah.
to get back.
So as far as looking at like the cultural economic factors, what did you notice? Like, is there anything that sets Belgrade apart from neighboring EU cities?
Um, so I haven't been to like Bulgaria, but I've been to Hungary, I've been to Romania. So those would be the I've been to Croatia. So those would be the neighboring countries, right, that are in the EU that border Serbia. But I would say the biggest difference I found when I left Germany and landed in Belgrade. I've lived in Germany and Scandinavia now for, I don't know, in total 7, 8 years, I guess. And I think Serbia gave me that impression, like, imagine landing in China or in Japan, where you had this very strong sense of a country's culture, but it's quite monocultural, right? So I felt like Serbia was very Serbian, very European, right? They were not as, let's say, multi-ethnic as most other Western cities that you visit nowadays, right? Um, that was one big thing I noticed. But it's not like they were unfriendly or anything like that to non-Serbs or non-Europeans. It was just that most of the people that call Belgrade home seem to be Serbian, right? And the second thing is, or European, let's say. And the second thing is, they were by and large very proud of their heritage, right? Very proud of. In no way did they come across as saying, "Hey, Serbians are the best," But you could just tell they were enjoying their culture. They were, singing Serbian songs in restaurants and dancing to it, right? They were, when you ask them, hey, which food should I go get? Of course, you get Serbian food, right? It's the best, that kind of thing. Which I found very, yeah, was very pleasant. And my traveling partners felt the same, right? And my friend's Chinese from Singapore. So for him, he was definitely, let's say, quote unquote, an outsider, right? But he felt very welcomed, and yeah, like he commented as well that things, people there were very warm and friendly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I think it's nice when people are proud of their heritage. Um, it helps it. I mean, you want to feel comfortable in your home, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And you want to ideally have the ability to make your home a place where you feel welcome and where you can make others feel welcome, come together at the table, kind of thing. The Germans often have this German shame, right, where we are perpetually sorry for the two world wars we started. And so, I mean, as you know, but for some people who might not, Germans are super opposed to flying their flag. Like, it's really only changed very recently that it becomes acceptable in the context of like soccer or the Olympics that you can put like the little German flag up. But even that, still, a lot of people will still look at your house if you put one up and say like, that guy is probably some sort of radical,
Yeah.
you know. So, which if you like, I spend a lot of time in the U.S., it's the exact opposite here. Like people put the flag on everything, everywhere, all the time. They sing to it, they pray to it, right? Like, I mean, otherwise you're the weirdo here if you don't do it. So it's a complete opposite. So I think that's good. That's nice. I think people should feel confident in who they are. I think that's the only way you can truly be open also to visitors and foreigners in exchange.
Yeah.
So a little more specifically, I guess, about the city. Did you do any kind of research into looking into different neighborhoods of Belgrade, or just kind of looked at the city at large?
Yeah. So I realized that I need to go back to the drawing board a little bit more, right? Because I knew that there was a lot of Chinese foreign investment coming in, right? And uh, we decided on one of the days to do a day trip up to Novi Sad, which, if you look on the map, it's about, I think, about 70 kilometers, I think, northwest, I would say, right, from Belgrade. And we thought, okay, let's just go there for the day to have a look. And we get there, right? We go into this central train station that is out of a movie. It's just that beautiful and modern, right? And then we get onto a train that's Deutsche Bahn ICE level of nice, or maybe nicer. I don't know, right? Just clean, nice, quiet, new. And for this 45-minute trip, right, with the train going, I think, top speed of 200 something kilometers per hour, right? We paid a grand total of €6, right, to get from one place to the other. And And so then it just made me think, okay, so suddenly, because of this infrastructure, this Novi Sad place was as cheap as Belgrade was. Novi Sad was still cheaper yet, right? And then you do the calcs in your head. You go, all right, somebody that's working remotely that needs to get to Belgrade for work if they need to definitely can do that kind of inexpensively and pretty conveniently, right? So then maybe go back to the drawing board a bit and look at where these new rail lines are getting built. Because I know Belgrade's getting, I heard from bartenders and real estate agents, right, that Belgrade's getting a metro system put in. And so in the past, anyone investing in Belgrade would invest really like in the old town or just in the very close suburbs close by, right? But once you get these metro stations up, anywhere that's 15 minutes away becomes so much more, let's say, quote unquote, livable for people that are looking to work and live in Belgrade, right? And so Belgrade's got a nice international airport. They've got this brand new high speed rail train station, and they're looking to connect it to Budapest as one of the main connections that's going to be completed in the next few years, which will also be pretty massive, I think, because Budapest is a really big, buzzing, vibrant city in its own right, right? Yeah. So I've been looking around. I'll have to come back to you on like exactly which suburbs, but that's also one reason why I want to go back, because after I've looked at where the new metro stations are, I'll need to go there and actually walk around and see for myself, right, where I think the value will be at.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good insight. But I always think of this in the West similarly, but I thought about it like, what if we truly get self-driving cars? A lot of places that currently aren't connected to any train lines will become much more valuable. But it seems like we're perpetually 3 to 5 years away from truly self-driving. But maybe I don't know. Maybe it won't have the same impact either. I just think if you live somewhere in the country, that's I think everybody who has kids really wants to live outside of the city, but you want to be able to get to the amenities of the city
Yeah.
as easily and as cheaply for convenience as you can. And then, like, if you live outside the city, but your kids have to go to soccer practice or something, well, if your car can just take them there and doesn't take any time out of your day, then you're like, great, let's move out to the lake or out somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So this, I think, the insight you shared about the train system and well, I forgot what the town's called, Novi Graz,
Novi Sad.
Novi Sad. That's
Yeah.
already a great insight. And then also because you would look into purchasing residential, right, like a condo type thing, and then rent it to a local. You're not looking to operate an Airbnb or something like that.
No, no, no. I'd love to, just get something where a family would want to call home, right, and just see if that works or not.
Yeah, yeah. So then you have to choose something that's appealing to the locals. So I think your thought process is on point. So you've mentioned that you know that there's tons of foreign direct investment, but just from the vibe that you got, do you feel like people in Belgrade or in Serbia are pretty open to foreign investment, particularly from people looking for a safe haven near the EU?
I think so. Like so walking around, you see um, construction sites, right? And you see big signs saying that it's being done by China National Rail, or I can't remember the actual names, right? And the only time I've seen these signs written in Chinese have been in China, right? And here I am in Serbia, and I see it there, right? And no joke, I got on the taxi at the airport to get to my Airbnb, and the guy was watching like Chinese kung fu drama on his phone, right? Whenever he was stopping at a red light, right? I'm like, I'm blown away, right? Like, where else in the world would I see this besides maybe in China or I don't know, in Malaysia or Hong Kong or something, right? Like, and here I am in Serbia, right? This big Balkan guy is watching like Chinese kung fu while driving me to my Airbnb, right? And yeah, and when I talk to them, taxi drivers, bartenders or guys sitting next to you at a restaurant table, they all say, "Yeah, what's wrong? The Chinese want to invest. They're not putting any military bases here. They want to give us good infrastructure. What's wrong with that, right? It's cheap. It's good. Like they've got. Remember, we had our call with Brian Lenny when I was there, and the reason why the infrastructure is so good with the telecommunications is apparently I can't prove that apartment had Chinese internet, right? But apparently China's put 5G all over their country, right? And we noticed it like a huge difference, right? My friend's traveling with a roaming SIM card, and he gets to Germany, and it's just not as good, right? So it's crazy. You're in this place where everything's so cheap, everyone's so friendly, the food's so good, it's safe, right? Nobody there's like the vibes you got about crime was like you'd never do the same things in Western Europe. People would come downstairs from their home with their laptops, their suitcases, whatever, and then they just leave it on the sidewalk and then go back upstairs to grab something else while leaving their bags, everything on the sidewalk. You'd never do that in the West. And if somebody stole your stuff while you did that, you get told, hey, you serves you right, right? Like, what are you doing, right? So just things like that you notice and you go, okay, very, very interesting. Yeah, the dynamics
Yeah,
between,
very interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Do
Um,
you so I mean you and I are on very similar pages about the EU losing appeal for several reasons: cultural reasons, regulatory reasons, economic reasons. How did you like when you talk to locals? Is that something that ever came up? Because I mean, we joke about the wokes in Germany and stuff. Are they aware that they're kind of a haven where people are maybe a bit more conservative or just not as nuts, or is that not something they're aware of?
I don't know. I think the people there look upon it like, just like how my Singaporean friend looked upon it, right? Like they don't really believe that it's really happening. Like they'll watch the news, they'll watch what's happening in the States, and then some barrier just comes up and it goes, I can't be that bad, or it can't be, like something's getting exaggerated. There's no way, right? There's no way that they're doing that stuff, you know? And I think I feel that somehow in Serbia as well, like it's not high on their priority list to worry about it because they don't see it at home. And then they watch it on TV and they think that it's just, a small figment of that other civilization. It can't be that widespread. It can't be that deep seated, right? It's just a phase. It's getting blown out of proportion. That's how they see it, I think. Um, but they definitely are very like they're very geopolitically aware, I think, just because of their history, you know. So they don't view the West as a all-encompassing moral, yeah, like a shining beacon on a hill. They don't see that, right? They see it very with clear eyes. They see it as, hey, the West wants something. Hey, Russia wants something. Hey, China wants something. Everybody's wanting something in their power plays, and we're a small country lying in the middle of it all. And we just need to find our way to get from point A to point B, right? And we need to manage that somehow. But at the same time, they don't, like, because of that history, they, yeah, I don't think they're running to be somebody's vassal, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think they would do, like, for example, what Sweden and Finland did and say, oh, yeah, 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 let's run and join NATO, let's open our country to American bases or NATO bases. Like I don't think they're on that. They definitely are more suspicious of the West, right?
Were you able to? Because I told you this anecdote. I met this Serb when I was on vacation in Croatia. That was talking about people are unhappy because of some deals the government has made, and he was saying that the Serbian government's actually quite corrupt and probably due for a revolution. Did you notice anything like that? Did people talk about this at all, or not really?
Quite a few people mentioned that they were pretty unhappy, saying that their government's pretty corrupt, right? And pretty incompetent. Uh, but then they go like, yeah, it's always been like that. Then it'll always be like that. But I didn't feel any vibes about any revolution coming up or anything like that. They were definitely not that happy with that mining deal. I think that they were going to have with Rio Tinto. Because I got a very strong sense that they love their country's nature. We had food and they were serving us, sheep, like sheep's cottage cheese from this region, and the honey is from another mountainous region in the south of Serbia, and there's truffles from Montenegro, and they really care, I think, about their natural capital, and that's why I think they push back on all these big mining projects, which I think can be managed, right? Like you can mine in ways that protect the environment pretty well. It just brings stuff up the cost curve, you know. So it's just about whether or not the country wants to put in those, you know, like in Canada or in Australia when they mine, they've got all these rules about how you have to rehabilitate the land. You can't have impacts that are too far reaching, right? And so it's all doable and been done before. It's just whether or not the country is strong enough to push back against these moneyed interests, right? To say, hey, you can mine it because it is part of, it's an integral part of, you know, primary industry, but do it properly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so the guy on the beach, my one reference, he specifically mentioned also the technology that they were planning on using was incredibly destructive. But he said there's way better ways to mine it, and he's generally not opposed to mining it because it had something to do with, like, I think lithium and renewable energy type resources that are needed and that are valuable. But he was just like, it seemed like personal interests were getting ahead of national public interests, right? But yeah, so just shifting back from that again to the real estate. So, I mean, I know you said you want to do more research, but just in general, broad strokes, how does Belgrade compare price wise to other places? Or, I mean, I don't know if you have other references, but I mean, I have a couple, if not. But so, like, what type of, like, how much is it to buy something of what size, and how much ROI could you reasonably expect from it?
Yeah, so we looked at a few. So you can choose, right? Like in all things, where do you want to be on that cost curve, right? But in terms of getting your foot in, you know, there were listings where there were apartments being listed that, you know, the agent said was in a pretty good, safe area, and they, you know, they'd be very confident that it would get good rental yields and also occupancy rates, right? And they were talking about, you know, 80,000 to 100,000 euros for a flat, and with the rental yields, it worked out after you paid all your taxes and paid for all your costs, worked out to be roughly 6% a year in rental yield. So for me, I find that very enticing because one, the risks are low when the price is low, right? Like for if the cheapest flat you can buy is 1 million euros, and you have to put in 10 times more capital to put your toes in the water, right? So to me, that was attractive. The second thing is, hey, if it's paying 5-6%, then you're getting a return on your investment while you wait for perhaps that investment to increase in value, right? In terms of capital gains. So yeah, for me, that was yeah. I was talking about it with this friend of mine that was there, and we were talking about another mutual friend of ours, and basically in Singapore now, if you were to buy any private property, you're looking at like any private property that's freehold, right? That means it's yours forever. It's not leasehold, which is like, you know, 99 or 70, 80 years lease, right? And in Singapore, for you to get your foot in any door, literally, right, you're looking at, uh, I don't know, 1 million euros, you know, 1.5 million euros. So when you're looking at that, 1.5 million euros versus 70,000 euros, you're talking about the fluctuations in value of any given year could be the whole quantum of your investing in this country right now, right? So that's one other reason why I'm finding it very interesting. You know, I
I
can
mean,
maybe try my hand
with
at
real
it.
estate, Yeah, with real estate in general, say you had a half a million to invest, right? Do you want to buy the one place, or you want to buy five small ones because you're more diversified as far as your rental income? You're more diversified in case of any catastrophic loss type thing. Like accidents can always happen, or floods, or storms, or something. But it's very unlikely that all five of your places, even if they're in the same city, it's very unlikely that they all get wiped out, right? So you're definitely much better set. I think. I mean, especially if you're starting out and you also just don't have like massive capital. This sounds very attractive. I mean, as a reference, right, in 2019, before COVID, so still normal prices, I would say, no more normal prices. I bought this one bed flat, 50 square meters in Leipzig for 130,000 euros, and it gets maybe 4%. Um, yeah, roughly 4%, but that's pre-tax in yield. So it's worse. It's good. It's actually not bad as far as investments go, but it's worse than what you just said. And even Leipzig is up and coming. So I think the values developed well over the last 5 years. But that's kind of almost the story that you want, right? Like Belgrade is maybe like investing in Leipzig in the '90s after the wall came down, type thing. So it's a good chance that in 20 years your Belgrade apartment would then sell for 5x, 10x what you pay for it. Maybe, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. And if it doesn't happen, then I don't lose my shit, right? I think that's the main thing because also I'm not super wealthy, right? So for me, there's also that opportunity cost because if I put all my money in one investment, then I lose a chance to find out about other markets, you know. So say let's say I had 500,000 600,000 euros to invest, right? I could buy one apartment and live in it in Germany, right? And it'd just be an average apartment in Leipzig, I think, nowadays. Um, for a family, I mean, you know. And with that same amount of money, I could maybe buy a flat in Hungary, a flat in Romania, a flat in Serbia, a flat in Czech Republic, right? Like put 100, 150 in four different flats. And then I'd get that diversification. I'd learn about different markets, you know, and maybe later down the road when I have more money, if I have more money, I'd then be able to better deploy it based on what I've learned, you know. That's how I see it anyway. And I'm not saying this is for everyone. I'm not saying this is, I have no idea whether it will work, right? But it's just the way I think about not only hedging my bets, but also hopefully learning from my bets.
The only thing I can tell you, just having the one flat that we're owning and renting, and we don't live in the same city, it's the amount of time spent that you have to consider overhead is substantial. It's more than I thought. And if you have each of these in a different country with a different language, with a different regulatory framework, it's unfortunately going to be a pain in the rear. Um, Even if everything goes well, it's going to be a pain because there's so many little things you need to know. Or like, oh, how do you call a plumber in Serbian? Like these are all things that you need to think through and work through a bit. It's a good thesis, and if you're enjoying it, if you enjoy doing it, if you need an excuse to go, for example, that's always great. Right? So I can any travel to Leipzig, I can always uh, tax deduct because I'm visiting my property. Right? Not any, but if you go once or twice a year, you can. Right?
Yeah,
Because I am visiting the property. Right? We met the renter. You were there, so it's true. But
yeah,
it is a bit of time and it's definitely effort. So nothing's ever free. If you want the complete careless investment yield, you need to buy, I don't know what, gold, I guess, at the moment.
yeah,
But I think it's a great opportunity, and I think I'd love to go visit Belgrade with you. And because if you really like the place too, right, and then you do have a reason to come back, that's also, I think, is really cool. Like it's a really cool like anchor, or like how do you you put a sign like a yeah like a light post there, and it keeps bringing you back. So I think that definitely would be very interesting. Really cool thing to do.
yeah,
Just an interesting thing to do in your life, right? I think it's fantastic.
yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. And I noticed about myself too, right? Like before investing in my first equity positions or before I invested in options the first time, like I did a lot of reading up. I did, watched YouTube videos, tried to, you know, prepare myself as much as possible before jumping in, right? Even traded with a paper trading account, did everything, right? And I thought, oh, okay, cool. Now I know, right? But nothing gets you learning as quickly and as deeply as having skin in the game, right? And I noticed myself the moment I put on that first options trade and lost it, like bam, right? I learned so fast, right? The same thing with buying and selling shares, right? If you lose money on a paper trading account, you don't learn as well as you do when you lose real money because it just hurts, right? So much more. And it's what Naval said, pain is the beginning of all wisdom, right? So in a way, I'm just signing up for pain, I guess. I want some Serbian pain, some Romanian pain, some Hungarian pain.
So you also spent you were in Prague twice, I think, this past year. So you are you thinking about it similarly, or as a contrast, or
Yeah, so I was in Prague. I was also in another city called Pilsen in the south, like just a bit, maybe was it 100 kilometers south of Prague? Uh, there, it's where this beer is brewed. It's apparently the first Pilsner beer ever made, right? And they still brew it apparently the same way. And when I visit the brewery, saw how they did it all. Um, I'd say, yeah, the Czech Republic's got many of the advantages that Serbia has, right? Like that we mentioned earlier, but it's more developed. So they're probably 10, 15 years ahead of Serbia in terms of being integrated into the European Western economies, right? So I think prices are not as attractive as in Serbia. But that being said, it's still a beautiful place. I would definitely look at, I'm thinking of going there again with my mom's visiting, and I'm thinking of going there again New Year's Eve time. And I know a guy there, that a French guy who has now moved to the Czech Republic, and he says he owns 10 apartments just in that small Czech city, right? And he was telling me in terms of standard of living, in terms of economic activity, in terms of how dynamic the place is. He feels like the Czech Republic has way more potential than these, let's say, more developed Western nations, right? So yeah, Prague, on the other hand, was more like, to me, it felt like an Eastern European London of some sort, right? Like it was huge. It was very, very rich, very, very beautiful. And it seemed to be this cultural capital for the Slavic speaking peoples. So we met people there from Russia, from Belarus, from Slovakia, from Ukraine, Poland. Seems like Prague's this magnetic place, maybe just because it's so beautiful, so welcoming, so almost like all roads lead to Prague sort of thing when you're someone from a Slavic nation, right? Um, yeah, my friend's from Singapore, right? And he goes there and he's like, "Whoa, I've never seen so many brand new BMWs and Mercedes Benzes in my life," right? Like you don't need to, like a G Wagon looks like a Toyota Corolla over here. Everyone's got one, right? Yeah.
yeah? I mean, the Slavs do like a good BMW or Mercedes. It's a it's a fact. I don't blame them.
It's crazy. We were commenting saying like, try and find one 3 Series or one, yeah, try and find a BMW that isn't an M, right? Try and find one BMW that isn't like a 340 or M3 or 650, right? Just find one normal, like 4-cylinder diesel, and you can't, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. As a German, I'm super sad that the Germans at large, we can at large not afford our own cars at least anymore, right? They
Yeah,
it has to be the econ version, right? I mean, in the US, I see it very similarly. Over here, they don't even offer. You can check this out. Just go to Audi.com or BMW.com instead of the European site, right? And you can see that the trims they offer here are all fully decked out. They all have large wheels, like large rims. They all have at least an M package, right? If it's not the full M version.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, of course, on one hand, culturally, the Germans, I guess, care about status maybe a little less. That's a small part of it. But on the other hand, they just also at large can't afford it. And
yeah,
however, they might actually pay a higher price tag for the more basic car, right? Because of all the taxation and all the regulation crap. So importing your vehicle from outside of Germany is often cheaper than just going to the dealership and buying it, right? How ridiculous is that? It just shouldn't be like that. I think it's I like being somebody who goes and travels, or like you, right? We see the world, and you're like, just this. What is this? A joke? You feel like you're definitely
yeah.
getting the short end of the stick, right?
But I notice when I talk to Germans about it, the first thing they say is like, "Oh yeah, there must be something going on, or they must have um, very high wealth inequality or whatever." And I go like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you're right," but that doesn't help the situation, right? It doesn't speak towards why Germans are doing it so tough. Why is everyone under financial stress? But they won't admit that they're under financial stress, right? I don't know. I think Germans somehow believe that they're the richest people on earth, right? And whenever you talk about other cities being decked out in luxury, it's almost looked down upon, right? Status is a very non-German ideal, or it's an unideal for the Germans, I think. So telling them that an economy is doing well based on the luxury you see in that city, they don't really they don't take it as a data point, somehow. I noticed.
Yeah, agree. And I mean, while all these things are true, there's a large wealth gap in Germany as well, as much as people don't want to really admit it or talk about it. But if you would, if you factor out the government aid to low income people, which of course from their perspective gives them income, right? But it's not earned per se. I can just purely economically speaking, like no value. I'm not putting any value on it as far as or whatever. I really don't care. But it's still a very large uh, income inequality in Germany. But that's not the point. Jason, thank you so much for the summary. I really enjoyed learning about Belgrade. And let's see if anybody cares to watch this. Maybe we'll do some more of these in the future.
Yeah, and we'll record the next one when we're in Belgrade together with the 500 Mbps upload speed.
That's right. And then you said you wanted to put together like a blog post for people who want to get the deets because you did make some contacts, real estate agents. You have some info over you were talking about like, oh, this town with the railway and like just any links that you have that you can throw up. I think would be very interesting. Just to summarize it in a short blog post, and we can link to it from this video.